Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a really interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Custom Knife Factory Marfione and Anton Malyshev Sokosha. So before I get any of this wrong and forget about it, this is the newest variation of this. We waited 7 months after the pre-order. I am certain that they will do this again. So if you're wondering, why would you review a knife that is not available? Number one, there's probably going to be special versions of this on NC Blade, which is where the pre-order was. And number two, they will probably do this project again. So I will link NC Blade down in the description so that you guys can check them out. They're an awesome retailer. I don't have affiliate links for NC Blade. They just have awesome stuff. You should definitely check them out. Yeah, so this knife, apparently the background is, it's a combination of the SOCOM, like that was designed by Tony Marfione, and a knife called the Veksha, which was designed by Anton Malyshev. And so they kind of combined them. And it's a CKF branded knife, right? So there's a lot of people involved, even more so, which we're going to talk about here in just a little bit. But I love this knife. It's got something about it that I really don't like, and we're going to talk about it. But I do love the knife for sure. Thanks so much to my patrons for supporting me. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. I did pay for this knife. I pre-ordered it, and then I paid the remaining balance, right? So I paid full price for this. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of the Sokosha. Overall length is coming in at, if you go to the back of the handle, it's 8 1/4. If you go all the way out to the glass breaker, it's 8 1/2. Blade length is about 3.65. Cutting edge is 3.5 inches. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons. Any custom scales you find in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and Others. So up against the AD 20.5 and the AD 10, 20.5 is down here. It's a big knife. It's not quite as big or robust as the AD 10, but it's definitely what I would call a large knife. How about up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3, which is gone for some reason? Oh no, it's over here. Here we go. Spyderco Para 3. It's even bigger than something like the PM2 with way more cutting edge. And then finally, let's put it up against the Benchmade Group Killing, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. How's the action on this guy? Very good. CKF, there's a lot of different things you could say about CKF knives or Custom Knife Factory, but poor quality and poor fit and finish is usually not there. I know that they've made some knives in the past, like people said that the Eagle Rock had a poor detent. Generally speaking, the quality of these knives is superior to other knives that you could consider in the same territory. Now, that's a confusing topic. What knives are in the same territory as Custom Knife Factory? I'm going to get to that because I've sorted through it and I can give you that answer. But the quality on this is off the charts. Very, very nice. Very snappy. It does make me think of the SOCOM Elite, and I love the SOCOM Elite. I own 3 SOCOMs. I guess 2 of them are Bravos, but I do own a USA SOCOM Elite, and it does make me think of that. This is very satisfying to reverse flick. It's also really nice to disengage. They didn't cut the front scale lower. It looks like this would be a pinchy disengagement, but it's actually really easy and comfortable. I think it's just the way they did the teeth right here, and then they kind of gave it a little bit of a bevel, so it's not really aggressive. Just really, really nice. Very satisfying to deploy. Very satisfying to manipulate. It feels safe. Feels reliable. It just feels like a good knife, right? So yeah, I'm really, really happy with the action. And I in particular, I love the wide, textured thumb studs that are just, they're really, really comfortable to engage with. So just huge thumbs up for me in terms of action, as it should be, because this is an expensive knife. Let's do carry profile. Thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. It's a little bit on the thick side, but it's also contoured, which is nice. This is a very, very comfortable knife to hold. Length and height up against the PM2 and the Para 3. Closed up, this doesn't seem like all that big of a knife. In fact, the PM2 will occupy more space in your pocket. Now, it'll be lighter because this guy's made out of titanium. Yes, titanium, not aluminum. It is made out of titanium. How many times have I said titanium? It's made out of titanium. This PM2 will occupy more space, but it'll be lighter. So it's not an enormous object to carry. Definitely a full-size object, but not enormous. Let's go ahead and weigh it. What are we looking at for the materials here? So let me get that card out real quick. This is what it comes with. You get the pouch, and you get the cloth, and you get a whole bunch of extra parts. Look at those bearings. Wow, lots of stuff in there. Definitely part of the reason why it's so smooth. But the card will showcase. Mine is M398. They clearly plan to make or have made a version of it in damaged steel. There's a lot of different options for the scale material, but mine is titanium and carbon fiber. Apparently there's a zirconium or a zircotite version of it. So yeah, M398. How is that heat treated? I have no idea. I did some light cutting with this. This is all DLC. There were two versions that were available. There was a black wash, which I don't think was DLC, and then there's a DLC. This is a DLC. It seems to cut just fine, right? But I don't know, like, here's the thing. 61 HRC or even 60 HRC M398 is going to cut really, really well. I would have had to cut with this for a long time to really be able to determine. But M398 shines up at 63, 64, right? I would just like to know, like, that's really cool they used M398. M398 is a very expensive composition, substantially more expensive than M390, right? That is a big part of the cost here, for sure. Again, we're going to get to that, right? But how is it heat treated? That's the main thing, right? I mean, you could say, oh, you should have tested this for months before you did it. I'm a design reviewer, so that's what I'm going to stick to. I still think, no matter who you are, right? Maybe you are somebody who takes these things out and uses them, really hard every single day and, maximizing the attributes of whatever blade steel is really important to you. Whoever you are, right? I want to know what the HRC is. We all want to know what the HRC is. CKF didn't post that anywhere, to my knowledge. So that's really important, right? I mean, if we find out this stuff has been heated to 57 HRC, I mean, who cares if it's M398? It's not going to perform anywhere near the way that it's supposed to. I would guess that it's got a decent heat treat on it, right? But I just want to know. So that'd be nice. But yeah, M398 is an expensive composition, so that's what the blade steel is. We have titanium, contoured titanium. For the scales, we have beautiful marble carbon fiber inlays. We actually have a titanium lock bar. I'll show you guys here with the magnet, which is, oh, there it is right there. We have a titanium lock bar that also has a steel lock bar insert inside. I don't know where my little flashlight is, so we're going to use this one so we can see. Right there. Can you see it? The little steel lock bar insert in there. That's pretty cool. That's not necessary, but they definitely went out of their way to do a titanium frame with a titanium nested liner lock that has a steel lock bar insert attached to it. They're definitely going above and beyond here. Again, not necessary. All that's necessary is steel on steel contact. So a steel lock bar would have been fine, but I gotta admit, it's real satisfying when they put a titanium lock bar in there. Like it's like they're just really going out of their way to use nicer materials, right? So that's cool. Might not mean something to you, but it did mean something to me. The weight on this guy, I don't think it's too far over 5 ounces, but we'll see. I bet maybe it's 5.5. No, it's 5 ounces. It's really not that crazy for a full-size, full titanium knife. A lot of my Hinders, my full-tie XM18s weigh 6 or a little over 6. So yeah, they've got some pretty good-sized pockets milled out for the carbon fiber there. So, but yeah, it's a pretty substantial knife, and the weight's not crazy. Also, the balance is really good. It is right behind the pivot, right where your index finger is going to be. So it doesn't feel like you're holding a big slab of titanium and steel, right? It just feels like a good full-size knife. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check on this guy. I'll get out my tools. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. This looks like a Microtech pivot, so that's probably a T20. Oh, is it even bigger? I can never remember if they're T20 or T25. This might actually be a T25. Hold on. It is. I love that. I love that it's a T25. That's great. The body screws are probably T10 or maybe even T15. Let's give it a shot here with T10. That would be, excuse me, my guess. No, they're not even T10. Are they just T8? Maybe a T8 plus. We'll see if my T8 fits. People keep reminding me that T8 Plus exists. I appreciate that. I do forget about that. Yeah, these are T8. That's fine. They're all large fasteners. You got two larger screws back here that holds in the nested lock bar. You don't need to mess with that. And then your pocket clip, I mean, that's if you want to turn this around, you're going to have to like unscrew this. And I'm not really sure. Usually there's like a hole there and you can like put a rod through. I guess you could probably there's probably an easier way to do this and a safer way to do this and a way to do this that would not screw up the glass breaker thing. But I don't care about glass breakers. I know, people are like, you'll regret it if you ever drive into a body of water. Maybe so, right? Maybe you're right. I don't know. I don't care about glass breakers. They seem to always be attached to anything that, Marfione's got his name on. I would just prefer that this was a screw for two reasons. Number one, so I don't have to look at what appears to be my knife halfway through a dump, right? That's what it looks like, just mid-poop. I don't want to look at that. I'm not going to use it, right? If it's a screw, then you can if it's a Torx head, then you can just unscrew it with the Torx bit, right? This, probably put a cloth around it and then use like, you could use like the grips on like the plier grips on, like a Leatherman or something and just turn it, right? I don't know how they expect, maybe there's some obvious tool that I'm not aware of. You can let me know. But that's annoying to me. So if you're left-handed, you do have the option. I want to point this out. You do have the option to simply flip the clip over, which is great. I think that's really cool. I think it's annoying that you're like stuck with this, like turning this, right? Unless there's some other way. If it ends up being simpler than what I'm displaying here, right? Because I'm not going to take this thing completely apart. If it ends up being simpler, the main thing that I want people to take away from this is that left-handed people do have the option to flip the clip around, which I do appreciate. I think that's really, really nice. So if you have a simple way to doing that and you're left-handed, you'll appreciate that you'll have the option to flip it around with that clip. So yeah, as long as you have the right tools for the job, you should be good to go. Let's go ahead and measure the blade stock thickness here, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes. Oh, there's my other flashlight. The blade stock, I'm going to guess, is 155 thousandths, perhaps 165. No more than that, though. I'd be shocked. Yeah, 155 thousandths. Okay. So, meat and potatoes. What a good looking knife. I do have to say, I was a little disappointed that we didn't get the shiny DLC option that we had on the CKF Rotten Evo 3.0. Wow, what a good looking finish. Why? CKF, why don't you guys do that anymore? That was like the nicest finish I've ever seen on a blade or on a titanium frame. That was beautiful. Bring that back. It's so nice. But this is still very, very nice. It looks like that super cool kind of. This is right there on the line where it's very tactical looking, but also very premium. But they didn't pull away from the functionality. The ergonomics allow for legitimate lock-in. That pocket clip is okay. It's weird. It's halfway sitting up on that lump that, the screws, like where it's required for the screws to hold in the lock bar. So it's kind of sitting on that. That makes for a really narrow area. Like I noticed, I was like, this is kind of, I'm having to fight it a little bit in and out of the pocket. Not too bad. I just wish that they had done away with the straight bill and just given us that. It's also kind of a bummer that we got, it's not a milled clip, it's a stamped clip, which a lot of people argue is like always more functional. I would say a lot of the time it's more functional, but not always. It is titanium though, so okay. Out of all the little things that I like to see on expensive knives, that's one of the less important things, as long as it's functional, right? And it is titanium. They didn't cheap out there. But a really good look. Titanium. For a long time, I thought that this was going to be aluminum. And no, it is DLC coated titanium. Same with the backspacer, the pocket clip, and it's all nicely contoured. I love the inlays. I am bummed out that they didn't do them on both sides. That really bums me out. The pocket clip, I think that this was intentional. The pocket clip looks like if it is mounted for left-handed carry, will actually land on this smooth little bar of titanium right here. I mean, it is lined, like I'm trying to keep my finger right on it. It looks like it lines up perfectly with where that pocket clip comes down. So the pocket clip does not contact the carbon fiber or, more importantly, the area that would make this rise of titanium fight your clip even more. So I think that's probably by design, and that's nice. But, you know, I didn't mount it on the left-handed side to see. I'm just guessing. But I really would have liked to see the inserts on both sides. It's still fine. It still looks really, really good. It's just that this side just looks super plain. I also wish that they had found a way to hide this completely, but again, it's not really that big of a deal. The rest of the knife is so beautiful, right? We see CKF right here, and that's it. No other branding. You got the Marfione dagger on this side, which I think is a pretty classy way to do that. You see M398, mine's number 412, so they made quite a few of these. But a really, really good looking knife from this angle. That blade is awesome, and man, it's a lot slicier than I thought it would be, right? You do have the chalky DLC, which it'll slow you down a little bit, right? The factory edge on this is good. It's not like, oh my gosh, it's an incredible laser beam, but the factory edge is fine. The blade geometry is much more important when it comes to, you know, your experience when you're cutting. So this has got a high flat grind on it, and it's a relatively thick blade. So when you're cutting into like thick abrasive materials, you're going to notice that geometry, and you're also going to notice it slowing down a bit because of this DLC, which is a bit grippy. It's more grippy than like a satin, you know, like an uncoated blade. This is going to pass through material a little easier. So not bad, right? You're just going to notice it. If you transition from a thinner blade with a satin or, you know, a nice smooth finish on it, you transition from something like that to something like this, you're going to notice it. But this is still really, really good. M398 is a stainless steel, but it's nowhere near as stainless as M390. That was one of the trade-offs. It's also not very tough. So this is not a blade that I would call like a hard use, like especially with M398, and especially if it's heat treated appropriately. M398, like a lot of people always say, oh, if you just want to make it tougher, then it's good if it's got a lower HRC. If that's the case, if that's what you're after, you don't want a steel that is meant to emphasize a specific balance that puts edge retention at the top, like the hardness, right? Generally speaking, it's going to perform the way that it's supposed to when the toughness is brought down and the hardness is brought up to accentuate edge retention. So the answer in that situation would be use a different steel, not take a steel that's meant to be super hard and not meant to be tough and meant to be, you know, have super high edge retention. The answer is not to bring that HRC down. I don't know why people create that argument. That makes no sense whatsoever. That's why we have different compositions that are specifically developed to accentuate certain elements in certain environments, right? Based on the design of the knife. So, I wouldn't call this like a hard use. This isn't the knife that I would take out and like baton with. Absolutely not, right? Day-to-day use and feeling cool? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And it's tough enough that it'll do that, right? I mean, you could use this as your dedicated outdoor knife. I just wouldn't do anything abusive with it. If the M398 is heat treated, if it's like super hard, then this edge, which is okay, it's not, I wouldn't call it a thick edge, right? It's kind of like medium, I guess. It's going to hold an edge for a super long time. It will not be fun to sharpen, especially again, if they are at that higher end of, you know, the higher HRC range. But this stuff is M398, I think competes with S110V. In terms of edge, it might actually be even higher. I have to check. Laren Thomas has a chart on this, right? People are going to argue. Laren Thomas has that that edge retention, like testing the edge retention of all these different steels. And even in M398, I think he tested it at a lower range, and it still like blew the doors off of all these different, you know, like high-end stainless steels. So it's one of the kings up there when we're talking about stainless steels, for sure. Not the king, but it's one of the kings. But I believe it competes or is slightly better than even S110V. I could be wrong about that, right? I'm never going to personally use this knife enough to know, but I'm just letting you guys know. It's got a nice tip on it. The bevels are very, very even on both sides. In fact, the fit and finish all the way around on this knife is just superior. It's so good. God, everything is so clean. The jimping is functional. Got some jimping back here. I like that back spacer. There's a lot going on here. Usually that they just do like a flush spacer. Not this time. It's really detailed. There's no way to touch the blade because the spacer all the way up to this little crest right here, it covers any area where you might dig in there and accidentally touch the blade. So that's nice. Everything is in character. Like it's all like the personality here is very continuous all the way through. Even with the blade being a little bit plainer, it does just have that look. It all just goes together and flows so perfectly. I love it. A little lanyard hole back here. We got the pocket clip, which we've already talked about. The studs here, I believe, are. Does it have an? does it have a closed position stop pin? I think it does. Yeah. So it's a closed position stop pin. I thought maybe the studs were the closed position stop, but I think they fall just short of contacting the frame. Yeah, that's what it looks like there to me. So the closed position stop is right here. The studs are the open position stops, which I always like. I think that's really nice when they do that. With this being DLC, you eventually will see little marks on these, where the studs will wear away at the DLC. That's just how that works, right? No blade play up, down, left, or right. There's no lock stick. There's no pivot lash. Very smooth and consistent in here. It's only going to get better. And a really, really nice detent with perfect centering. Can we see that? Yeah. This is a really nice knife. Where are CKF knives made? Good question. I intentionally waited, because I want to prove a point. Right now, if you go down into the comments, you're going to see a whole bunch of stuff. I don't want to support Russia. It's made in Russia. I don't want to buy. Those people who yell that, like the vast majority of them who yell that all the time and yell it over and over and over again, they haven't done any research. It's just a parroting, repeated comment, right? Now, to be honest, I didn't know either. I've always said I'm not really 100% sure. I think the company's based in Russia, right? But I'm not 100% sure. There's a lot of weird indicators here, right? So a lot of people will just yell that and then leave, right? It's like their whole purpose on Earth is like to make some grand political statement and then, like Batman their way out of whatever environment they're in. Now you guys can go down there and correct all of them, and you can timestamp this if you want to, because I got this information directly from the owner of Custom Knife Factory. Back in 2020, the company was registered in Russia, and that's where he lived. Back in 2020, they pulled the entire company out of Russia and moved it to Slovakia. So the owner of CKF lives in Slovakia, and the business is registered in Slovakia. Does that mean the knives are made in Slovakia? No. Were they made in Russia when it was in Russia? No. The parts are all machined in China. So it's not like the blade steel comes from Bowler. Bowler makes M398, right? But the machining is done in China. Those parts are shipped from China. The majority of them are shipped to Slovakia. This is where they do the special finish work. This is where they fit them and tune them and assemble them, right? So we can't reduce it to made in China. It means the machining's done in China, but there are definitely some added costs to consider. He did add that occasionally there are elements that are like elements of certain knives, certain finish work. Some of that is still done in Russia, a small amount. They also have one-off true customs that are done in Russia. This is not that. This is the Slovakia end of it, right? So, if you have been under the impression that all CKF knives are made in Russia and you are somehow supporting by some weird extension that nobody ever really wants to dig into, you're supporting like everything that Russia does, that's wrong and stupid. And it's something that's just parroted by people who think that like, oh yeah, I have to like point this out because I've heard it, but it's just wrong, right? But by this point in the video, those people who can't help themselves, they're not actually here to watch the review. They're just here to make a political statement and then leave, which is super annoying, right? So yeah, those comments will be down there and everybody can go and correct them and timestamp if you guys want to, right? Or you can just leave them. Who cares? You don't have to interact with it. This is, now on the other end of it though, like if you've always assumed that a large portion of these are made in China, you are correct, right? They do that. So Chinese manufacturing, well, that brings the total, like where the cost should be in my mind, that brings it down, right? Because Chinese manufacturing is way less expensive. Obviously very, very premium, very precision. I mean, this is like Riot quality. I mean, if I don't know who the OEM is. They have some secret OEM. A lot of people think that this is like it's Kevin John who does. If you know what Kevin John is, then you know. But that's what people think, that this is like a Kevin John machined knife. That could be true. I have no idea. That's a rumor, right? I don't know that for sure. But It is made in China, and whoever's doing it is on par with Riyadh. It's very, very clean, right? So it is Chinese manufacturing, and it's precision Chinese manufacturing, but it's still Chinese manufacturing. So there's a big cost of that coming out of it. If they had done all the machining in Slovakia, I don't know what the labor costs are there, but I can guarantee you it would be more than China. The hand tuning, assembling, and finish work, when they do that in Slovakia, that does bring it back up a bit. I don't know exactly how much. It's really hard to put my finger on, right? M398, is that a premium and expensive steel? Absolutely. It's even more expensive if they decide to really heat treat it properly. That's pricey to do on a blade, definitely. It's also real DLC. Real DLC is definitely not cheap, right? Got a nice backspacer, got a titanium pocket clip, not milled, right? It's contoured titanium. We've got beautiful carbon fiber inlays. A lot of stuff here that would point to it being an expensive knife. So how much was it? Well, if you went and looked at the website, you probably thought, oh, okay, it's $590 or $480 or $490 for the blackwashed one. Actually, I don't know if they did this on purpose. They only posted the amount that was due after you had pre-ordered. So it's actually $100 more than that. We all put $100 down to pre-order it. That makes this version of the knife $690, and the black washed version $590. Is this a $700 knife? No. No. I would say this feels like a $450, maybe $500 knife maximum. I have no idea what it cost them to do what they do in Slovakia. I don't know exactly who the OEM is, but I know that it's China for the parts, right? I don't know all of the costs associated with this, but I would bet my channel that there's some absolutely insane markup in this over, like other companies doing relatively the same thing. So yeah, it's really cool and I really like it. But I mean, if you're looking in the $700 territory, are you going to find, like the same, like, is this competitive at the $700 price point? No. Really nice, right? But it's always like the fit and finish on these has always been very distinct. Like this feels like precision China, and that's not bad. If you've not been around in the knife world for a long time, you might just think that China is synonymous with low quality. It's actually quite the opposite for a select few OEMs. These hyper complex, hyper precision Chinese OEMs are some of the best knife OEMs on earth. Excuse me. I ate lunch before I did this video. Just horrible burp of jalapenos and pickled onions. Sorry about that. I'm glad you guys can't smell it in here. It's bad. But no, these OEMs are so good that they kind of make a joke out of, not a joke, but like they're doing some incredible work, right? The precision machining is absolutely amazing. And it's always felt like that. Like, when you pick something up and you're like, this is a little too perfect. This has to be made in China. That's kind of how I've always felt. But I always refrained from saying that because I didn't know. And honestly, what I should have done is just reached out to him a long time ago. One thing is for sure, you are definitely not funding some Russian regime by buying CKF knives. It's just, I'm sorry. That's not what's happening, right? So if you've dedicated a big portion of your online activity to like shouting that, well, that's a big old pie in your face. In fact, it's not just one pie. Like it's a pie for every time you did that. So imagine like a crank machine gun cannon that only shoots pies and you're just sitting there cross-legged like a goon with this thing shooting pies into your face from 1 foot away. Oh my gosh. No, but seriously, it's good that we have the right information, right? So if you're going to parrot something and repeat that. But if you don't believe me, go ask CKF directly so that you know. Back to the price though. This is too much money. Too much. The only reason to buy this is if you've got like the next one that comes around. Like I'm happy. I bought this and I am very much aware that I overpaid. I like it. It stings, but now it's mine. So, okay, right? So the point of the review is to let you guys know, as somebody who bought this and is currently handling it and knows, got the information that I did, like this is the information that I want you to use before you decide if you want to buy something like this in the future. If you look at this and you're like, you know what? I don't care if it's overpriced. I just really, really like it. I love how that looks, right? You're saying that it's built super well. It's like impossibly precision. And, I'd like to know the HRC as well. I think that's a big point of it. Like, we got to know the HRC, right? If you can look past all that stuff and the next time they do one of these, you want to pay $700 for it, go ahead, right? I would say there's a lot, you can get a lot more for $700, right? There's a lot of really awesome knives out there for around $700, right? If they had priced this at $500, I'd have said, okay. $450, I'd have said that's right on the money, That's what I think. Maybe I'm being a little harsh here, right? But that's honestly what I think. I do like it though, and you're definitely going to see it a lot. Despite what I'm saying here about the price tag, I really like this knife. I mean, this brings me a lot of joy, right? Not enough joy to justify what I paid for it, but a lot of joy. So not a knife that I would recommend to people who are looking to, get the best bang for their buck. But is it still one of my favorite knives? Is it good enough to go on my favorite knives playlist? Which, if you don't know, like, what is it? That's so confusing. It's not worth it, but it's one of your favorite knives. If I take what I paid for it and toss it out the window and I just isolate the amount of joy that the thing brings me, if that joy crosses a certain threshold, it goes on that playlist. And that's what this is. It is not a knife that I would recommend to somebody looking to get their money's worth out of, a super expensive knife. But does it bring me joy? Yeah, it definitely does. It's really cool. Marfione stuff tends to do that. And a lot of CKF stuff tends to do that too. So maybe they know what they're doing, right? If people buy it, if there's a market for it, they're not going to change the price. So please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.